Hi everyone, Zoe here. I know, back again, second video in 1 week, shocker. So as promised, this is going to be an update on 4 years of gender transition. So if you're not interested in that sort of thing, then I will see you in the next video. For those of you who are staying, my plan is not to retread content that I included in previous videos in the series. If you want, they're going to be linked in the video description below. So my goal is just to basically tell you where I started and then bring you up to date with where things stand here at the end of December 2020. So let's get started. I don't think I've mentioned any of the Being Trans series of videos that I had been thinking about transitioning for like several years before I actually pulled the trigger on the process. Unfortunately, this hit when I finally came to the end of my tether and decided that I'm not going to be able to continue this pantomime of masculinity for the rest of my life. I unfortunately was doing a PhD at the time, and I didn't feel I had the spoons to like simultaneously cope with the stress of the doctorate, as well as coming out to every single person I knew and convincing them that my gender was valid. So I was putting it off. My plan was I'll deal with it after the PhD, but I finished the PhD in 2016. And at that point, rather than like get started with transition, I started researching it. So I'm reading and like planning and finding out what the state of play is and legal status for transgender people, healthcare on the NHS. I live in Britain, so I need to understand what the rules are for the UK. And anyone who knows me, or anyone who knows me who's watching this will be laughing right now because, yeah, I am perfectly happy to plan and prepare and research something that I'm going to do as an excuse not to actually do the thing that I'm researching and planning and preparing for. So yeah, I am the queen of procrastination, and I managed to like burn most of 2016 just like getting ready to transition. But the event that actually finally gave me the kick in the ass to get started happened in December of 2016, and it was just a party with friends. This is a circle of friends, mostly PhD students, that I'd been role-playing with on a weekly basis for years. And by role-playing, I mean like Dungeons and Dragons, these sorts of tabletop RP systems before you get the wrong idea. But so yeah, it was just mainly kind of a birthday party, really, for one of my friends. And towards the end of the evening, most people had gone home, but there's a few of us left. And I'd been helping someone polish off a bottle of wine. And someone innocently asked, hey, I noticed that like in all the years that we've been playing all these different systems, all these different campaigns, I've never seen you like choose to play a male character. Is there a story behind that? And like, you know, me, I just like opened my mouth and I'm starting to actually answer the question like completely honestly. And some part of my mind just kind of like said, whoa, hold on. Are we really about to come out here and now? Is this the moment? And like, I mean, they already knew that I was polyamorous and that I was pansexual, but none of them knew I was trans. And so I think like some part of my brain just kind of seized up and said, no, I'm not ready. Despite the fact that obviously I've been spending like most of the year planning to do this very thing. And so yeah, I sort of like changed the subject, derailed things, and then the evening wound down and I went home. And then I just felt like a coward. Like I lay there in bed thinking, well, if I can't tell like my friends, like this close circle of friends that I'm literally hanging out with every week and have been for years, then how am I going to actually socially transition? So I wrote everybody an email like after the fact saying, sorry, I kind of flaked out on that question. I'd be happy to talk about it at some point. I didn't mean to shut down the conversation. Let me know if you'd be interested. Now, nobody like rushed to take me up on that offer, but maybe they were just giving me my space. Either way, it told me that I needed to actually to do this. Like I couldn't like continue. Like if I was that scared in that moment in the safest possible place to come out, then yeah, I was never going to get this underway. So at that point, I actually started doing everything. I started like looking on eBay, trying to find used clothes so I could start building a feminine wardrobe. I bought one of those intense pulse light gizmos for removing body hair. You know, you blast your hair follicles with high energy light and all this sort of stuff. So I got underway, and by January, I was actually like obviously coordinating with my wife and talking about how things were going to go forward. But everything else was in stealth. So like nobody apart from her knew my plans to transition as I moved into January of 2017. And she knows me well enough that she's like going, okay, I think you need to choose a date when you are actually going to come out and tell everybody, or at least the people that you need to know, what you're doing, because if you don't set a date, you will not do the thing. You need a deadline. So I chose my birthday, which is in May. So in May of 2017, I sent this email around to like 40, 45 people, basically people that I was either currently interacting with regularly, old college friends from back in the States, people that I just felt kinship with, even though I may not have met them, like I only knew them over the internet. So there's this group of people that I felt I should tell first, and then I'd worry about telling my colleagues at work and stuff like this. And it went pretty well. I mean, to be quite honest, I don't know if I've mentioned this in previous videos, but of like those 40-some people on the BCC list in the email, only 2 people got back to me with like what I would consider negative or highly unsupportive replies. One of them was like, aren't you being a bit selfish? Have you considered like the thoughts of your wife and stuff like this? And the other one was basically, I just don't see it. Sorry. It's like, well, fortunately, you're not in my body and in my mind, so it doesn't matter what you think. I know how I feel and my experience of the world and of gender, and so I don't have to like basically justify myself to you, but thanks for the vote of non-confidence. But apart from that, like everybody else was really kind and helpful. I got like the full range of responses. I got people saying, you're so brave, and I'm like, I'm so not. I got people saying, I think that the most common response, and the one I appreciated the most, was just the people who were happy for me, like congratulations, or good for you, or well done, I know it must be quite a relief, or best of wishes going forward with this, because that showed that they understood that whilst this was not going to be pain-free, that I was opening myself up to lots more discrimination in my life and lots more just bureaucratic and social problems, that I was doing something necessary for me, and that I was able to express my true self, and then no longer having to like hide that aspect of me was an important step forward. This was a good thing. So yeah, the people who recognized that and just were like congratulatory and like supportive, kind of calmly supportive rather than you go girl, that really pleased me and made me happy. So yeah, overall that went really well, and I felt not emboldened, but I felt reassured that I should go with it. I had made the right choice, and that going forward and just like getting things underway was now what I needed to do. So I obviously, there's the name change. I did a legal name change. I contacted all the banks and the government and the taxman and everything and told them my new name. Obviously my workers, my employer, the Open University, had to get all that sorted. That took forever, like the whole summer and into I was getting worried as we approached the fall term that things wouldn't be in place, and that I'd have this awkward thing where my students were sent the wrong name for the person teaching their module. So fortunately that did not happen, but it was a bit of a close call. But yeah, I just started getting things in way. Now, unfortunately, one of the things that you need to do here in Britain to get any health care as a transgender person is go through a gender identity clinic. Basically, your local doctor will do nothing for you, or if they're very kind, they might do something called bridging therapy, but that's on the understanding that you are going to be seen by a GIC, but most won't do anything for you. The response by your average doctor on the NHS is, oh, is this to do with being transgender? Well, not my problem. Good luck. Go ahead and talk to the GIC. The problem is the waiting list to be seen at a GIC, a gender identity clinic. There's only like 9 of them or so, maybe 10, I'd have to count, across the UK. Is like in the years. It's like 3, 4, 5 years, depending upon which GIC you refer to. So you need to start this process and then wait a long time before anyone will help you or give you anything to do with being transgender. So I tried to start that process, and my doctor, my assigned GP, because on the NHS you register the practice, you don't get to choose your doctor, like they just kind of like randomly spin a dial, throw a dart at a board, whatever, and they're like, looks like we're assigning this new patient to this doctor in the practice. So I'd never met this guy, but when I was forced to meet him and try to get him to refer me to the GIC, which is what the NHS guidelines tell doctors to do, he refused and tried to like tell me that, oh no, you have to go through the psychiatric wing at the local hospital and they'll decide what to do with you as a transsexual. So obviously someone who was not up to date on best practice and obviously didn't care, like when I presented him with like all the filled out paperwork, he basically just binned it. No, I'm going to do my thing. So that was unpleasant, but I did manage to get referred through a fight. I managed to finally get referred to the GIC. And then when I heard from them, when they got back to me to say, oh, congratulations, here's your letter saying that you're in the waiting list. We will let you know when your name comes up. I had all my research in 2016 had suggested that it would be maybe 12 months maybe, from start to finish, from referral to first appointment. But no, when I spoke to the patient liaison of the GIC, she's like, oh no, it's going to be at least 2 years, maybe a bit more, at least 2. So I'm like going, okay, so that's at least 2 years from now, and this was like June of 2017, before I can hope for any help at all. So at that point, I knew that I wasn't going to want to wait that long for to start hormone replacement therapy to try to achieve some form of bodily feminization. So I started researching like hormone regimen, like what's the safest, which ones have which side effects, this sort of thing. That's all covered in another video, so I'm not going to go into it. So go look at the video on HRT, 2.5-year update, for more on that. But so yeah, by October of 2017, I was starting on a very conservative hormone regime to try to see if I could like nudge things in the right direction. But that's covered in that video, so I'm not going to go into it. So yeah, let's go ahead and just fast forward like 3.25 years, because basically not much happened. I mean, apart from the social transition, which has gone fine, like I'm out to everyone I care about. So like literally everyone knows me as Zoe. It's not a problem. Like all my students know me as Zoe. They've seen me in like tutorials. It's been fine. I mean, of course, I benefit from some privileges like the color of my skin, being middle class, my profession, and living in this part of the country where it's slightly more cosmopolitan. I mean, we're close to London. So I realized that were my circumstances different, I might be getting a lot more side eye, a lot more evil eye, in fact, as I go to like the shops or the post office or whatever. But it's been mostly okay. But yeah, so 3.25 years move on, and then in August of this year, I get an email from the patient liaison at the GIC saying, well, we've just received authorization from the trust to conduct first psychiatric evaluations via webcam. So basically, would you like us to set up a Microsoft Teams like assessment for you with one of the doctors? I'm like, yes, please. So that happened, and that was an hour and a half, like with me, like looking at the doctor, and also he had an associate next to him. So like it was like these two talking heads on the screen. We had this webcam thing. But yeah, I went into it kind of steeling myself for the worst, because having read the accounts of other trans women in the UK who've gone through this process, who've got their GIC evaluations, some of them, and it's not an insignificant fraction, report having had their doctors like make kind of like innuendo or not off-color remarks, but jokes that aren't really funny or could be misinterpreted, or asking really inappropriate questions that don't really seem to have anything to do with determining a diagnosis of gender dysphoria. So I was ready for anything, and I just told myself, look, because this is a gatekeeping process, I cannot access healthcare to do with transgender issues unless I go through this. So I was just like, Zoe, just bite your tongue. If the doctor says anything inappropriate, you just like move on, do not react. So because I wanted to get through it to actually get to, well, the stuff that I've been waiting years to get to. So turns out I needn't have worried. In my case, at least, my doctor was lovely, professional. All the questions were appropriate. I mean, covering everything, obviously. They are slightly uncomfortable talking about everything from your childhood and your relationship with gender as a child, and all your dating and your history and how your family is taking it and stuff like this. But yeah, it was nothing that seemed like, wow, they shouldn't have asked that. And then at the end of the 1.5 hours, he kind of turned to his colleague and said, like, well, I'm confident to return a diagnosis of gender dysphoria. Do you concur? And like the other guy, who I guess was monitoring because this was a new thing with the webcam psychiatric evaluations, was kind of like just checking to make sure the ethical practice was being done. He kind of nodded and says, oh yes, I concur. So I didn't expect I would get the actual confirmation of the diagnosis of that first evaluation at the end of the evaluation. I thought I'd be waiting a week or two to hear. So that was reassuring, because at that point I'm like, well, I know in Britain they require 2 independent psychiatric evaluations before you can access healthcare on the NHS for transgender issues. But at this point I've got 1 in the bag. So that means even if the second guy down the road who decides decides I'm not trans enough or something, he's going to be fighting the diagnosis of the first guy, so they have to duke it out. So at that point, I'm like, good, this is better than leave me starting on the wrong foot. So that happened, like I said, late August. And then I was trying to set up the second appointment, which eventually happened at the end of November, so just last month. I know I should have covered all this in updates before now, but life and coronavirus got in the way. So yeah, so that was August, end of August, and then I'm trying to chase up what I'm allowed to do with the GIC. I'm like going, I know that I have to wait until the second evaluation, but in the meantime, can we get like the paperwork underway for all the all the medical interventions that as a trans woman I'm allowed to have on the NHS. So these things include stuff like, well, obviously the hormone replacement therapy. I was told to come off. Like they're like, we don't support injectables on the NHS, so stop injecting yourself with estrogen. We're going to set you up with a different hormone regimen. We talked about like the different forms of estrogen that they do support on the NHS, and in the end I was like, I guess I'll go with the gels, since it was going to be pills, which are not great, they're not very effective. Patches, which I've heard can like leave rashes or be itchy or fall off, or gel. And the only problem with the gel is like you have to wait for it to be absorbed by your skin. So they're like, oh, if you're going to put on clothes to go into work, you might want to make sure they don't like soak up the gel. I'm like, I work from home, so don't worry about that. So yeah, but one thing we didn't talk about at the time was the anti-androgen that they were going to choose to. Basically, the thing is, as I've covered in that other video on HRT, so I'm not going to go into great detail here, you need something to suppress your androgen levels, production and receptor binding, to allow the estrogen to like take over and like manifest in your body. So for that to happen, you need something. But what I was eventually prescribed was like the nuclear option for basically sex hormone production in the body. So it's something called Lupron, or that's the brand name. It's Leuprorelin acetate, I think. And like, to my knowledge, this is only used as a puberty blocker, like for incipient puberty, like for teenagers who are about to have to face all these bodily changes, who are trans, and they want to like just put the brakes on and buy themselves time. That's when you use Lupron. It's for like, if you're like an adult, in my case, transgender woman, middle-aged, you don't need like something this fierce to suppress androgen production. I just need something to like lower it. So I was a bit shocked, and I've been trying to coordinate with the doctor to see if I can get the anti-androgen they're choosing changed, because basically the prescription I've been sent, which I'm allowed to get, was waiting on blood tests, which I'm allowed to get as soon as that's all gone through, is for Lupron. And looking at the side effects as well, I don't know if I'm very keen to start on Lupron if I don't have to, and I don't think I need that much androgen suppression. So anyway, I've been chasing that. Another thing, obviously, is voice therapy. Trans women are allowed, I think, like 8 sessions of dedicated speech therapy with a speech and language therapist, SALT person. And that's just to basically try and sort out my voice, because although, as mentioned in this video on how to feminize my voice, this is a homebrew option. Like, I have managed to bring it up from a very deep bass all the way up to where it is now. But it doesn't sound supernatural to me, and I would like to fix that, ideally. So, yeah, I was requesting that, and I was told, oh, I'm sorry, yeah, our SALT was on maternity leave for like a year, and basically, apparently the NHS didn't bother to like hire someone to like cover for her during that time. So like the backlog is now over 2 years long. So it's like, it will be more than 2 years before I can possibly get my first speech therapy appointment with her to get some advice on how to make this sound more natural. So that's good. I was told at the same time, basically, oh, you could, of course, try to refer through your local, sorry, my voice is going, through your local GP. And I'm like going, oh, really? Because every time I talk to my GP about anything to do with trans healthcare, they say you have to wait for the GIC. So it's this kind of like ping-ponging back and forth between different agencies. And yeah, the doctor's like, oh, well, we'll just put a note in your file saying it's okay. But yeah, they can do it locally. There'll be some local speech and language therapist in your area they could refer you to, so you don't have to wait 2 years for ours. It's like, funny how you didn't manage to tell my practice that back when I referred to you three and a quarter years ago, but thanks for nothing. So there was that. So that's going to be sometime next year, maybe. Oh yeah, the facial hair removal. We're entitled to a very tiny budget on the NHS to basically remove facial hair, obviously. And I did do some, as I've mentioned in one of these videos, which I'll link up here. I did some laser hair removal sessions back down in London a few years ago. But they've done, I wish my throat weren't filling up with phlegm as I tried to speak to you. That's gone pretty much as far as it can. So at this point, I need electrolysis, which is slower but permanent. And yeah, so I was trying to get like the authorization letter from the NHS Trust, now that I'm with the GIC, to say that I'm allowed to actually get this amount, which is about a quarter as much money as you need to actually clear your facial hair, but I'll take what little I can get. But I was chasing that for 3 months, so I literally only got that at the end of November, this letter saying, this patient's entitled to this much. Here's a list of NHS-approved electrolysis. And then I started phoning them and found out because of coronavirus, like most of them have either shut up shop, can't start yet. One was considering retiring next year. I think she's going to. Most of them aren't in my area, so I'd be traveling like halfway across the southern half of England to get to like Peterborough or Leicester or something like this to go to one, which means obviously risking being exposed to coronavirus because I'm on like a series of coaches for many hours each direction. There was one local one that I could get to if I hopped on my bike and cycled for half an hour, but she was the most expensive on the list, so the cost ranged from like 50 quid per hour to 80 quid per hour, and since the NHS is giving you a fixed budget, you definitely want the cheaper hourly rate, assuming they're all competent electrolysis. But in the end, dealing with many different options and phoning lots of people, I've come to the decision that I'm going to go local, because it turns out that there aren't actually that many options. I had like 3 options, and they're all kind of bad in different ways, but at least this one here, I can just literally cycle to, so I don't have to worry about public transportation, I don't have to worry about trains or buses being canceled. And yeah, she's the most expensive, but oh well. So yeah, I'm hoping to start that next month. It depends on when we come out of Tier 4 lockdown. The UK at the moment, because we have a novel strain of coronavirus, the entire south is basically completely locked down, and there's no indication of when exactly we're going to get out of that. So I've heard from her that she has received authorization, like because the letter wasn't enough. I'm sorry, I should quickly clarify this. I fought 3 months after my GIC appointment. I fought 3 months to get this letter from the trust confirming that I could do electrolysis, and then I took that, like when I phoned around and figured out which electrolysis I was going to go with, I cycled out, saw her, did the test session and the consultation, and she said, "So are you happy for me to put in the proposal?" I'm like, "What proposal? I've got the letter right here saying that I'm allowed this much for electrolysis as a transgender woman on the NHS." She goes, "Oh, sweet summer child, it doesn't work that way. There's another step where basically now that you have that letter, I take a copy of that letter and I draft a proposal saying that I'm willing to do this number of hours at this hourly rate over this period for this patient, and then I send that to the trust, and then someone there eventually rubber stamps it and says that I'm allowed to start treating you and that the money is in place to pay me when I invoice them." I'm like going, "Oh, how long does that take?" And she goes, "Oh, typically 3 or 4 months." So at every stage, there's just all these delays, but I was really relieved to hear from her literally like 2 days ago. She sent me a text saying, "Good news, before people packed it in," maybe it was 3 days ago, "before people packed it in for the holidays, I just received a communication from the trust saying that my proposal has been accepted for your facial hair removal. So once we're out of lockdown, God knows, end of January, February, who knows, I can start treating you." So that's exciting. So that's the first thing that I'm sure is going to happen. There's other stuff that I think will happen eventually, but I don't have a time frame on them. And that's kind of where we are at the moment. I mean, the final updates would be that I've also asked to change and then finally manage, after a few months chasing it, to get my NHS number and record updated, because when you're changing your gender marker, you need a new file, and they kind of migrate stuff over and then they lock it. So your doctors now won't see your old name when they look at your medical records. They know that you're transgender, but they don't need to know more than that. So I was trying to get that done, and that took forever as well. And that finally came through. And then once that was working, I was able to get the blood test that the GIC had requested like a couple months prior, because while this was going through, the NHS deregistered me from my local practice. So I phoned in to try and set up the blood test, and they're like, I'm sorry, have you registered with us yet? You realize you have to register before we can treat you as a patient. I'm like, I've been registered with you for 7 years. It's like since I moved to Milton Keynes. So that was fun, but it's all fixed now. I've had my blood tests, and yeah, I'm just trying to get the psychiatrist to give me an anti-androgen that isn't Lupron. And once I have that confirmation, I can take that to my GP, and the GP will fill a prescription, and then I can start on official GIC, hormone replacement therapy. So that's kind of where things stand. That brings you all up to date. I hope this was interesting. But some good news. I mean, I finally got my GIC appointments. I'm in the system. Things are happening, and hopefully 2021 will be a year of more progress than the progress that has stalled on my do-it-yourself plan. So who knows? I'm hoping for the best. But anyway, enough about this. I think the next video will probably be in January, because I don't have anything I could just talk about off the cuff like this in the meantime. So have a happy holiday season, and I will see you in the new year. Take care.